And I am recording, also guys, I am recording the webinar. So even though it is a free webinar, we are going to post it on the website so you guys can rewatch this later on as well. All right. It's a free webinar, so you guys get that free recording with the free purchase of the training. All right. So again, we have contour spacing is again from the original object to that new object that we're creating. All right. From that point on, what we're looking at, the reason why we have a wider gap here, that's our fill line spacing. All right. So after that first original layer, everything else is going to be the fill line spacing spot right here. All right. So 0.14, that's referred from this point here to this point here. All right. So let's say I go down here to this one right here and we do 3 islets, or let's do 5 islets. You'll notice once again, we will have that original layer is going to be 0.05. That's only going to change if you change that contour spacing. All right. Everything else from this point on is going to be 0.14. All right. So does everybody have any questions as far as those 2 settings right there? And those are the 2 most important settings when working with the island fill. Now the spacing up here, that's referring to the actual spacing between each stone. All right. So once you place the stones, the spacing between each stone is going to be 0.02. So that is referring to the actual stone placing. All right. Does anybody have any questions on the fill-in spacing, contour spacing, inside, outside? All right. Because that's very important to know. Obviously, if you go further on and add the stones, we want to make sure that our spacing is correct so we don't overlap them. All right. So it's very important to understand the concept behind the fill-in spacing and contour spacing. All right. So everybody good on that part there? Perfect, perfect. So let's go in here and delete a couple of these layers, and let's show you what else we can do with the island fill. All right. So far what we've created was a new layers to the inside. Now those again are vector layers. So those are cuttable layers that we can send to our cutter and cut them out. All right. Obviously with the island fill, we also have a couple different options, like I mentioned earlier, with the ability to actually place the stones in an actual object. All right. So let me go ahead and reset my settings here so we can just go back to our normal settings. And let's go here, 0.14 again. All right, so let's go ahead and make this 0.14. All right, so now, what if we want to create what if we want to actually add stones to a certain layer here? All right, so a couple different ways that we can go about that. Again, we have our circle here, so I can select the circle. Now let's go to the inside here. Actually, let's go outside since we just did the inside. So I have my circle here. I'm going to select outside. Now notice I'm going to select that add stones option here. All right. Add stones option. Now we can go ahead and select the number of layers that we want to create. So let's select 3. And then let's go over here to our contour spacing. And notice what I'm going to do here is put 0.07. All right. 0.07. That's half of my 0.14. So that's going to give us the right spacing in between our stones once I place it on this image here. All right, so let's go over here and left click on island fill, and there is our island fill. All right, you can see it went to the outside. It created 3 islands, so 1, 2, 3. And also the 0.07 contour spacing is what is giving us this little gap right here. All right, so this right here, this is still our vector file, but notice we have a little bit of gap between our stones and that original vector image there. The reason for that is so we don't have overlapping stones with our vinyl. All right, so what we've done is basically created a multi-decoration design where we could have vinyl on the inside, and this could, of course, be holographic. It could be glitter vinyl. It can be the new foil material. It could be your easy read material. It could be really any type of vinyl can be placed in there. All right, some cool things that we can do from this point is actually change the layers. All right, so notice here we still have those paths going through our image, right? You see that line that's going right through our circles there? Let me go to wireframe so you guys can see it better. But with that path going through our circles there, what that allows us to do is select each individual layer and actually change the colors. So see, I can change that one to yellow. Let's go make this one maybe TRW blue. And now we've created a multicolored rhinestone design. All right. And that was all done because I haven't actually cleared those original paths that were created. All right, so let's go over here and go kind of create the same thing here with a square object. So again, we can do now, let's go ahead and do 4 to the inside. And notice with this image here, I have a corner detect angle right here. All right. Now this was a circle, so there are no corners here. Now in this case, because we do have corners, I want to select that option here. All right, so we're going to go ahead and select corner detect, and now I can go ahead and left click on island fill, and there's my new island. So basically, we've just created a cool looking shape. This could be a frame, this could be something that we can put on the outside of an already existing rhinestone design, and you can really get creative in that sense where you can now customize, the outside of a design, add different features to it to make it more unique. All right, so again, we can go in here, we can select any of these rows and change the colors. And now the reason why these are all separated, guys, is because I selected that corner detect right here. Otherwise, these will all be one box. All right, does that make sense? Because I selected the corner detect, the way that corner detect works is going to separate these lines here. And you can see it's going to place the stones one on top of the other. So make sure that if you are using that corner detect, we go after the fact and actually merge your stones together. All right, so merging them together is going to take care of those overlapping stones there. Cool things that you can do with this. Let me go ahead and go back a few steps and not select that corner detect here, so you guys can see what it's going to do without the corner detect. All right. So notice the difference here, guys. When I don't select that corner detect, you can see where we have those stones don't fully go one on top of the other, so we have overlapping stones. All right. Now the reason I'm showing you guys this is, notice if I go here, that's a full square now. All right. So what does that allow us to do? Because I have not selected that corner detect and they're all full squares, technically I can go here and select this shape here, the outer edge or the outer square here, and I can hit the up arrow down here at the bottom of my wizard. All right, so we have our magic respace, and then we have our add stones and release stones. All right, so if I go -1, you can see it's going to move that layer, and all of a sudden those are perfect now. All right, and the reason we can do that is we can create a custom scatter effect with those arrow keys there. All right, so there's the outside layer. Let's go to the new one here. Let's do the same thing. And you can see how it fixes those. Not only is it going to fix the corners, but also it's releasing the amount of stones that's in that box or in that path, and it's giving us a more unique look to that original design there. All right, and we can just keep going along this line here and just keep going minus. I mean, we can even go more now to give it more of that scatter look. And you can see now there's a much different look to that frame now. And let's do the same thing here. Maybe we can even go a lot more now. All right, so let's go right on there. And then we can go highlight. Let's go clear our paths. And there's our design, guys. So look how unique that is. Instead of just having just regular square boxes, now we have a more unique look to our design, and it looks a little bit more fancy. Again, this could be something that can be added to a pre-existing design, or it could be something that we can just keep as is. And now you can, if you want to add some monograms in the center there, that'd be a good way to utilize that square here. All right. So what do you guys think? So far, so good on the numbers of islands here that we're using, and also being able to utilize those paths to create new shapes or new images or new scatter effects with the island fill there. So far, so good, everybody? Excellent. Hey, Diane, how are you? Tanya? Excellent. All right. So why do we have these two down here? All right. So obviously, we've gone over just creating different layers. But what if we want to fill in a design? What if we want to fill in the full image? All right. It would be pretty difficult for me to go in here and try to guesstimate the amount of islands that's going to take to get to the center point, correct? So here's what we can do. Let's go ahead and reset my settings here. Now I'm just going to go ahead and change this fill line spacing to 0.14. All right. And everything else here is going to stay the same. But I am going to select the add stones feature. All right. So now we want to fill this entire circle. And again, I don't want to guess the amount of layers that I need to create, because that's going to take some time. All right. That's going to be a little bit trial and error. So with the island fill, if I don't place a number in that box right here, all right, and I just hit island fill, oh, let's go inside, and I go island fill, it's going to fill the entire circle for me. All right. Now, right off the bat, I can see right here in the center, we have overlapping stones. Again, remember that feature, that tool I showed earlier with the arrows? I can select any of these circles here, hit the down arrow, and now we've cleaned up that circle there. See that? And again, we can go to any of these layers and we can change the colors. We can make it more custom. Again, it's completely up to you. And notice the reason we're able to do this, again, is because of the paths that are created. All right, so each of these layers are still in that path, so it allows me to go in there and easily change the colors or again the amount of stones on that path. So I can always go here on the down arrow. You can see again we're just getting rid of stones on that path, so it gives us a more unique look to that overall design. All right, now here is the downside of that island fill. Let's say we're working with something like this that's a little bit more of a, obviously in this case is a square. So if we're working with something like a, let's say a college black font, all right, that's again more of a square font. So let's take a look at what's going to happen once I do create my fill to the inside. Again, we're going to go inside. Islands is going to leave, we're going to leave that blank. I'm going to select the add stones option here. And then we're going to keep the contour spacing as is. All right, and let's just do island fill. All right, so you guys can see what's happening here. Right off the bat, it doesn't look very clean. There's a lot of sections here where stones are overlapping, and you can see kind of once it gets towards that center point, and those lines aren't perfect. All right, so let's go back one here and see what happens when we select the corner detect. Corner detect, island fill, and again, a little better as far as the corners, but yet, again, it's not a full square. All right, in that case, we know to use a different tool. All right, and then that would be obviously the hatch fill tool, which we're going to cover in another training later on. All right, so just know when you're working with the island fill, it's better to work with a design that's a little bit more rounded. It's going to look a lot better in the long run. All right, anybody have any questions as far as the island fill here and filling in an actual image? All right, beautiful. All right, so let's go to the next page here. So here, one of the biggest questions we get is, I have a font, but it's very thin. All right, and obviously with thinner fonts, when we're cutting them out with vinyl, if it's a very small font, it can be very difficult to work with. All right, and we obviously want that font to stand out more. So how can we make a font thicker? All right, very easy actually with this island fill tool here. All right, so let's say we had the word cheer here. I can go here to my outside. Let's select one island. Again, we're not going to select stones for this part. And we're just going to go ahead and change our contour spacing. Again, remember, the contour spacing is the actual size of the new layer. So that gap between our original object and the new layer, that is the contour spacing. So let's go 0.02 real quick. All right. So we have outside selected, I have island selected, and I have my contour spacing at 0.02. I'm going to go ahead and left click on island fill. And you can see it creates a very thin outline here. So that gap is very thin. But because this font is a nice cursive font, we obviously want to still keep the same properties. We want to keep that the thicker lines and the thinner lines. So when I remove this top layer, there is my new thicker outline. All right. So let's go ahead and change the color. Now, do you guys know how to get rid of these blue outlines here, that little boundary that's on there? You guys know the easiest way to get rid of that? Right click on the X. Tanya, you're on top of this. So right click on the X and bam, there is my new thicker font. Again, if I go to my wireframe, we're still looking at, now notice how I didn't have to weld it before I actually created that island fill. I can leave it as is and it still once it does create the island, it's actually welded all together. All right, so you don't actually have to take that extra step to weld the original image. But notice again, these are cut lines. We're still looking at that thicker lines, the thinner lines there, so it still has the same overall properties. But again, this is going to be much easier to cut out, and also it's going to look a lot nicer because it's going to stand out a little bit more. All right. Now, what if we go too big? What if we go contour spacing? Let's go 0.1. All right, let's go 0.1 contour spacing and then do my island fill. Now what we're looking at is we're going to lose a lot of the properties of that font. You can see it's much thicker there. It doesn't have that nice fancy cursive kind of from thick to thin lines that our original one here had, and also the one that we created at 0.02. All right, so yes, you can't go too large. If your contour spacing is too high, it will be too much where I mean, obviously it doesn't look bad, but if you're going for this look here, that original look, it's almost too much. All right. So if you want to keep that same concept, the same properties, you want to go a little bit less on the contour spacing. So something as simple as 0.02 will make a big difference. All right. Now, of course, it also matters if the size of your design. So if your design is 2 inches wide, it will make a big difference as far as the contour spacing that we're working with. All right. So what do you guys think? Pretty simple to now go ahead and, utilizing a pre-made design or a font that you're working with and you just want to make it a little bit thicker to make it stand out a little bit more, you can go from that point on. The last thing that we can do is obviously we can go here. Let's go back to that 0.02 because actually let's go 0.07. And notice I'm just going kind of random numbers at the contour spacing. And again, the beauty of CorelDRAW, Diane, yes, basically the same concept. The contour same as an offset. So notice what with CorelDRAW gives you the ability to easily go back and redo something. So even if I don't like the spacing, we can always hit the back arrow and just start over. And it doesn't take much time at all. All right, so let's go 0.07 and do my island fill. Now notice again, this is just a new layer, so I can go here and make that black now, and now we've converted that single color design into a two-color image. All right, so this could be two colors, and there it is. We have our outline here. Again, let's get rid of that little border there, and there's our two-color design here. Yeah, it's a little bit of like a UCLA color, so if you guys are not UCLA fans, I apologize. That was not what I was going for at all, but there you have it. There you have Charlie. How would I figure? I knew right away that that's what you guys were going to say. So why don't we change the colors? Let me just make it simple. We'll change it just, that way it's nothing, no sports related there. I knew that was coming. Purple and gold, huh? I couldn't have seen that one coming, Charles. I know where you're from, so I figured that was coming. Carlos said boo as well. Everybody said boo after those colors, of course. All right, but again, we have those two layers there. And now again, we've completed a more custom image. So from a single design, a single font, we're now able to create a two-color design. All right. So everybody good as far as being able to thicken that font or adding another layer to that font to create a two-color, three-color, four-color image. And again, that's just based off of this number right here, islands. All right. So we can change the islands and we can have more colors if we wish. So let's go 3. And let's go island fill. And now we, of course, have 3 new layers. So there's our first, there's our second, and there's our third. All right, so I don't know why I went back to those same. I think it's just very easy. It's just towards the top, so it's just easier to click on. But again, now we have a 4-color design. So we have that original layer and our 3 new layers that we created. All right. So again, that's island fill to be able to add on to a text, to either thicken that text or add a different color behind it. So we have a multi-color design. All right, so about 5 minutes left, which is pretty good. We're making great time here. All right, so now we're adding rhinestones. Carlos, if that's the case, put orange for UT. All right, we'll see what we can do. All right, so now we have, obviously we want to not just add a layer, but now we want to add rhinestones to the new layer. All right, so here we have swim, obviously inspired by the Olympics because Michael Phelps is just ridiculous. But here we have the word swim. Now we want to add the stones to the outside of this text right here. All right. So again, let's go refresh our settings here. Let's go 0.14. Now I'm going to go outside. All right. Most likely you're going to be adding the stones to the outside. So we're going to keep that outside selected. Let's go add stones. All right. Contour spacing. Very important in this case. Because it's in the image on the inside, we still want to cut out that with vinyl. What do you think I'm going to use for the contour spacing right there? What do you think is going to be the best option for that contour spacing? Carlos, 0.14. All right, that's good. That's good because that's actually great spacing. That's going to give you a little bit of spacing between the vinyl. Auto works as well. So basically what you want to go for is 0.07 or above if you're working with the SS10 stone size. All right, 0.07 or above. And you'll see when I do my island fill that 0.07 is because it is a little bit over half of our SS10 stone size, it's going to give us a little bit of a gap between your vinyl and your new layer of rhinestones. So realistically, it's up to you guys as far as preference, as far as the actual distance between your original layer, which is going to be the swim, and that new layer, which is going to be your rhinestones. All right, so anything above 0.07 will work. All right, so let's go here. Let's hit island fill. Oh, did I not do islands? It always helps if you put the numbers of layers. So let's put 1 island there and let's hit island fill. All right, and there we go. So it added the stones. Notice that 0.07 gives us still a little bit of a gap between the stones and that new layer there. All right, again, we can go here. If we have some overlapping stones, again, not to worry because these will be very easily fixed. All right, but before we do that part, let me go ahead and bring this one out here. Duplicate that one real quick and show you guys. I know you guys mentioned the auto, so let's go refresh here. I'm going to go auto, and I'm going to go auto here, and then we'll do 1. All right, so again, the auto is set to our SS10 stone size, so it'll be at 0.14 still. Now, contour spacing, when you select auto, is also going to be 0.14. All right, so let's go here to my add stones, and let's hit an island fill. And now, because I did that little bit more of a contour spacing instead of doing 0.07, we can see the difference between this one. Look how much closer that is to our vinyl. And of course, our new layer, which is a little bit further away from the vinyl. All right, so again, that's complete preference. It's up to you guys. Whatever you think works best for you. I like the stones to be a little bit closer to the vinyl, but again, that's preference. All right, so how do we actually fix this design right here? All right, so the first thing we can do is let's highlight our image, and we're going to go ahead and left click on our clear paths down here. And notice how we have these overlapping stones. Let me get rid of this one real quick here so it doesn't select those as well. All right, so with those overlapping stones here, we can now select one blue stone on this page, go right up here to where it says left click on same color, and that's going to select all the same colors. Again, that feature is right below our colors right here, the one in the middle. All right, so that's going to select all the same colors. I'm going to go down here to the bottom of the wizard where it says merge overlapping stones, and bam, there's our overlapping stones. So those are all merged together. Of course, we got a little bit of a gap there, so we can use our respace tool, or we can also add stones just by selecting that drop a single stone. I can go right here and bam, and there's our single drop. All right, so again, that's right down here at the bottom right hand corner to add a single stone. And again, one of the tools that we push a lot is that magic respace, because it will make your life a lot easier. But notice with that merge, it merges all the stones together, so now our design is much, much easier to clean up. All right, and you can see now we have a nice outline. All right, anybody have any questions as far as adding the stones to the outside there? And also how to get to the actual part where we can actually edit? And again, I'm not jumping into the editing process. That would take a little bit more time. Kind of just want to go focus more on the actual being able to add the stones and the layers with the island fill. All right, so finally we got swim down here. Remember earlier when I mentioned the fact that we want to work with something when we're working with the island fill, something that's a little bit more of a rounded design, more of a rounded object. So in this case, we want to fill in the full swim. Did you break before the spacing? What do you mean did I break before the spacing? Are you saying the respacing? Yes, you do have to do to do the magic respace, you do have to clear the paths. All right, so this is the clear paths button right down here. So you do have to break the path, Diane. Otherwise, because it's still going to be on the path, it won't allow you to actually do that respace. In that case, you can still use the arrow keys to either get rid of a stone or add a stone to that layer. All right, so finally we got down here. Down here, we're looking at the text swim, and we want to fill in the entire text. All right, so we want to fill in this entire design. How can we go about that? Again, let's go back to this original one here. And remember how we did the circle here? I'm going to go ahead and do the same exact thing for the swim here. So let's go back. Let's go inside. I'm going to select add stones. Here we're going to go 0.14. Now contour spacing in this case, we're going to leave at 0.0. All right. Knowing that I can always tweak that contour spacing to make my fill a little bit nicer. All right, so let's go ahead and do island fill now, and that actually comes out pretty nice. All right, so you can see there's our fill. Let me go ahead and highlight that design. Now, there's two ways to clear paths. Originally, there's that original image that we started off with that was created in Corel Draw. Now, if I left click on clear paths, it's going to get rid of all that. All right. Now notice what we're looking at here is our stones are overlapping. All right. So let's go here. Let's merge our overlaps. And there is what we're looking at. But again, notice what's happening here. That could take some time to edit, right? There's a little bit of gap in that spacing there. All right. So that's where I'm referring to the contour spacing can be very useful in this case. So let's go back a couple here. And let's go ahead and change our contour spacing. Let's go 0.02. And let's do an island fill. And you can see right away it's going to be much cleaner. All right. And let's go even more and more. Actually, let's see what it looks like right now. Let's go highlight, shift click on the clear paths. Let me go ahead and shift click on clear paths. And let's do a merge overlap and see what's going on here. So merge overlap, and that looks a lot nicer. You see how much nicer that looks here? All right, of course, we have some areas here we'll want to fill in, do our magic respace. And then again, that can be, I've gone over that again in different webinars, and we can also do a webinar on editing the stones as well. But you can see much cleaner as far as the spacing here. So the editing process will be much simpler. All right, and all that was by is changing that contour spacing from 0.00 to 0.02. So something that minimal made a huge difference in the overall placing of the stones in that path. All right, so what do you guys think looks better? Overall easier to fix this way with the 0.02, or previously when we had that 0.00 where we had a little bit of a gap between this row right here and every other row? Absolutely, Mike. I think this way looks a lot nicer and overall much easier to edit. All right. Now, one last thing that we can do, let's go back a couple steps here. Again, at this point here, we can always select any of these points. Oh, let me go back one here because we clear paths. So we can always select any of these layers here, make that green, and all of a sudden we have a two-color font. All right. So before you clear the path, we can always go here and actually change the color of that layer. Tracy, yes, that was what I was doing earlier, where you could do the respacing by adding and releasing stones there. All right, so we can go here and add a stone, and you can see how adding a stone is going to edit that image as well. All right, and that's with the path. So you basically have to use the arrow keys. You don't want to hit the respace again. You just want to do up or down arrow. All right, and that's going to clean up a lot of your image as well. All right, but you see how by leaving the paths in there, we're still able to add colors to the layers, to the different layers. So this one here, we can select this one. Let's make that yellow. We can select this one, make that one blue. And again, now we have a multicolor design. All right. And that's all getting done just by leaving the paths in your image there. All right. No problem, Tracy. All right, guys. So it looks like we're just about out of time here. Anybody have any questions? Anybody have any questions as far as the island fill? I'd be more than happy to answer those now. I would also, I'm also going to go ahead and edit this recording. We are going to be going to Baltimore on Wednesday. So Trade Show Baltimore, NBN Baltimore. We have a couple seminars. Obviously, we'll be doing the free trainings in the booth. So we're going to have a great time, but I want to make sure that I get this up and running for you guys. So you guys can go ahead and go back and rewatch the webinar today. Yeah, Tanya, and that's ultimately the biggest thing is just getting to a point where you can just practice to get the concept down. And I mean, all it takes is, a couple, 30 to an hour just practicing on the island fill should do the job. I mean, it's once you get the concept of how the layers are added and the concept behind the fill line spacing and contour spacing, it's very simple. It's not too difficult to get the concept down. All right, but again, it just takes some practice, absolutely. Just like any other graphic designing program, practice is going to make perfect. All right, guys. So if you enjoyed this training, make sure to check out our free and premium webinars located in the link in the description below.